The night always holds secrets unseen by the eye. Behind the darkness, there are whispers that not everyone can hear, footsteps that shouldn't exist, and shadows that move on their own in the corner of the room. This story isn't just a tale to scare you, it's something that may have happened, or could be happening right now, closer than you think. Listen carefully, and make sure you're not alone while hearing it. I never thought my life would end up like this. I used to have everything: a thriving business, a big house, luxury cars, and a bright future. But now, I'm sitting in a small roadside coffee shop, staring at my phone screen as notifications of unpaid bills keep popping up. My construction business collapsed overnight after one major project failed catastrophically. The money I borrowed from banks, friends, and even loan sharks vanished just like that. I tried to hold on, selling off my assets one by one, but it felt like trying to scoop water out of a sinking ship. My divorce 2 years ago seemed like a bad omen, and now, I was truly at rock bottom. In front of me, a cup of black coffee had gone cold as my mind spun in search of a way out. I couldn't go on like this. There had to be a way to turn things around. As I drowned in my thoughts, a familiar voice called out, "Arman." I looked up. A man in a batik shirt with slightly graying hair stood before me. It took me a few seconds to recognize him. Hendra, an old friend and former business partner. "Wow, Hendra. It's been a while." I stood up and shook his hand. He gave a small smile and sat across from me. "I heard your business is struggling," he asked bluntly. I sighed, offering a bitter smile. "Struggling is an understatement. It's on the verge of total collapse." Hendra nodded slowly as if he understood the weight of my situation. Then, after taking a sip of his coffee, he looked at me intently. "What if I told you there's a way to turn things around quickly? Would you be interested?" I scoffed. "Don't tell me this is about some scam or pyramid scheme." Hendra chuckled but kept his serious expression. "No. This is something different. But I've seen people get rich because of it." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He leaned in closer and lowered his voice as if afraid someone might overhear. "Have you ever heard of a wealth pact from China?" I went silent for a moment, trying to recall if I had ever heard of such a thing. "A wealth pact?" I repeated slowly. "You mean like the local ones here? Stuff like piggy bank spirits or money-fetching ghosts?" Hendra shook his head. "No. This is different. It's not the usual folklore we hear about. This comes from an ancient Chinese tradition, something that's been around for centuries." I stared at him, both curious and skeptical. "So, how does it work?" Hendra took a deep breath before answering. "It's called the Golden Devil Pact. Many wealthy people in China, especially those who suddenly became rich overnight, are rumored to have used this ritual. They make a deal with ancestral spirits or certain supernatural entities as a form of soul investment. They offer something valuable, and in return, they receive unimaginable wealth." I swallowed hard. Even though it sounded like a cheap horror story, something inside me wanted to know more. "But there's a price, right?" Hendra gave a small smile. "Of course. Every deal has a price. But if you know how to handle it, the risks can be minimized." I was still digesting Hendra's words when he invited me to meet someone who, he claimed, could explain everything in detail. That night, he took me to a small restaurant in Chinatown. The place was dimly lit, with red lanterns hanging from the ceiling and the heavy scent of incense filling the air. In a quiet corner, an old man in traditional Chinese robes sat motionless, sipping his tea. "That's him," Hendra whispered. "His name is Mr. Liu." We walked over, and the old man slowly lifted his gaze. His sharp, narrow eyes studied me like he was peering into my very soul. "You are Hendra's friend?" His voice was calm but held an air of authority. I nodded. "Yes, sir." Mr. Liu examined me for a few seconds before giving a faint smile. "You look desperate." "That's good." I stiffened. "If you truly want to reclaim your life, I can help you," he continued. "But understand this: once you step into this world, there is no turning back. I swallowed, my heart pounding harder. Mr. Liu began explaining the Golden Devil Pact in detail. This is not just any ritual, he said. It is a contract between humans and entities that have existed long before our time. They do not take your money, but they will take something far more precious, something you can never get back. I frowned. What do you mean? Mr. Liu's lips curled into a faint smile. An offering. It could be an object of great personal value or something deeply tied to your soul. I fell silent. What was the most valuable thing I had left? Everything was already gone. Noticing my hesitation, Mr. Liu chuckled softly. You will know what to offer when the time comes. I glanced at Hendra, who simply nodded, as if to say this was all perfectly normal. If you agree, Mr. Liu continued, come to the old temple deep in the forest tomorrow night. Bring your offering. I weighed the decision carefully. This all sounded insane. But I also knew I didn't have many options left. If there was even the slightest chance to turn my life around, I was willing to take the risk. I nodded slowly. All right. I'll be there. Mr. Liu's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Good. Prepare yourself, because once you enter this pact, there is no way to undo it. I had no idea that my decision that night would mark the beginning of a nightmare beyond anything I could have imagined. The next night, I found myself driving towards the outskirts of town, where the forest grew thick and untouched. Hendra sat beside me, silent for most of the ride. I could sense his unease, but he never tried to stop me. The air grew colder as we left the main road and entered a narrow dirt path. The deeper we went, the heavier my chest felt. It was as if the forest itself knew what I was about to do and was warning me to turn back. But I had already made up my mind. After what felt like an eternity, we arrived at an old temple hidden deep in the forest. The structure was ancient, covered in moss and surrounded by stone statues of creatures I couldn't recognize. The atmosphere was suffocating. Waiting at the entrance was Mr. Liu, his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed with an eerie intensity. You came, he said, sounding unsurprised. I nodded, stepping out of the car while clutching a small wooden box in my hands, the offering I had decided on. Mr. Liu glanced at it and smirked. Let's see if the spirits find it worthy. With that, he turned and led me inside. The temple was dimly lit by flickering red candles, casting long shadows across the stone walls. In the center of the room stood an altar covered in golden cloth, adorned with incense, ancient scrolls, and strange symbols drawn in what looked like dried blood. Mr. Liu gestured for me to kneel before the altar. I hesitated but eventually obeyed. He then placed a black ceramic bowl in front of me and handed me a knife. Drip your blood into the bowl, he instructed. I swallowed hard. I had expected something sinister, but the moment I held the knife against my palm, the reality of what I was doing hit me. Was this really worth it? Before doubt could take over, I pressed the blade against my skin and let the blood drip into the bowl. The moment the first drop touched the surface, the candles flickered violently. A gust of cold wind blew through the temple, even though there were no open windows. Mr. Liu chanted something in a language I couldn't understand, his voice growing deeper and more guttural with each word. The air grew thick, heavy with an unseen presence. Then, I heard it. A whisper. A low, raspy voice slithering through the air, speaking in a dialect I had never heard before. Something was here. Watching. Listening. The room became unbearably cold. My breath turned to mist, and the shadows in the corners of the temple seemed to shift on their own. Your offering, Mr. Liu said. With shaky hands, I placed the wooden box on the altar and opened it. Inside was a wristwatch, my father's old timepiece, the last thing of true sentimental value I owned. The whispering grew louder. The shadows deepened. Then, the lid of the box suddenly slammed shut on its own. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the temple, vibrating through my bones. My heart pounded in my chest. Mr. Liu smiled. They have accepted it? I barely had time to process what had happened before the candles dimmed, their flames now burning an unnatural shade of blue. The air smelled of something rotten, like burnt flesh mixed with incense. A sharp pain shot through my hand, the one I had cut earlier. I looked down and saw that the wound was no longer bleeding. Instead, a thin black mark had appeared, swirling like ink beneath my skin. "It's done," Mr. Liu whispered. "The pact has been sealed." We left the temple in silence. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. Hendra drove this time, his grip on the wheel tight. He hadn't spoken a word since the ritual ended. Finally, after nearly half an hour, he broke the silence. "You should prepare yourself," he said, his voice low. "This is just the beginning." I turned to him, frowning. "What do you mean?" Hendra hesitated, then sighed. "The first sign will come soon. A test. If you survive it, the wealth will come." A chill ran down my spine. "Survive it?" He nodded grimly. "Mr. Liu never tells people this, but some don't make it past the first night. The spirits don't just give wealth for free. They test you. If you're not strong enough." He trailed off. I clenched my fists, my mind racing. What kind of test? Hendra didn't answer. He just stared ahead, his face pale. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I wasn't alone. The room felt colder than usual, and the silence was too heavy, too unnatural. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., my phone rang. I flinched. Who would call at this hour? The screen showed no caller ID. Hesitantly, I picked up. "Hello." Silence. Then, a whisper. Low, guttural, and inhuman. "Do you regret it?" The voice sent a wave of cold terror through my veins. My body locked up. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. The whispering grew louder, the words twisting into something incomprehensible. Then, suddenly. Bang. Something slammed against my bedroom door. I jumped up, my heart hammering in my chest. The door handle twisted. Slowly. My breath hitched as I scrambled backward, pressing myself against the wall. The door creaked open. And in the darkness of the hallway, a pair of glowing red eyes stared back at me. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The hallway outside my room was pitch black, except for those two glowing red eyes staring straight at me. The figure stood motionless, its silhouette barely visible against the darkness. My body screamed at me to move, to run, but I couldn't. Then, it took a step forward. The sound was wrong. It wasn't the sound of bare feet or shoes on the floor, it was something sharp, like claws scraping against wood. I gripped my bedsheet, my heart pounding against my ribs. Who are you?" I managed to whisper. The figure tilted its head, as if amused. Then, in a voice that sent a chill down my spine, it spoke. "You made a deal." The whisper was layered like multiple voices speaking at once. Male, female, old, young. A chorus of whispers coming from one entity. I felt my throat tighten. My mind screamed at me to wake up, to convince myself this was just a nightmare. But the ice-cold air pressing against my skin told me otherwise. The figure took another step forward. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then, the thing did something I will never forget. It smiled. Its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth. "Your test begins now." The room went completely dark. I don't remember how long I was unconscious. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my room anymore. I was somewhere else, an old, abandoned house with rotting wooden walls and a stench of decay filling the air. The dim moonlight seeped through the broken windows, casting eerie shadows along the floor. I stumbled forward, disoriented. My body felt numb, my legs weak. A whisper echoed through the empty halls. "Find the door, before it finds you." My heart dropped. What did that mean? Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A slow, deliberate tapping sound echoed through the house. It was coming from behind me. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of movement in the darkness. Something was crawling toward me. Its body was twisted, bones jutting out at unnatural angles. It had no face, just a gaping black hole where its eyes and mouth should have been. And it was fast. Panic surged through me as I stumbled forward, my eyes darting around for an exit. There had to be a way out. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was closer now. I ran. My feet pounded against the creaky wooden floor as I sprinted down the hallway. The house felt endless, every turn leading to another dark corridor, another dead end. Behind me, the thing was getting closer. Then, out of nowhere, I saw it. A red door. It stood at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar, as if waiting for me. I didn't hesitate. I lunged forward, reaching for the handle. Slam. The door shut before I could touch it. The whispers returned, louder this time. You must offer something, or be taken. My breath came in ragged gasps. Offer something? What did that mean? The creature was only a few feet away now, its distorted limbs twitching as it crawled toward me. I reached into my pocket, searching for anything that could be an offering. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. My father's old ring. I had forgotten I still had it. With no time to think, I pulled it out and placed it in front of the door. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then, the red door creaked open. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself through it. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt a sharp pull, as if I was being yanked back into reality. I gasped, my body jerking upright. I was back in my room. My sheets were soaked in sweat, my breathing ragged. I frantically looked around, expecting to see that thing still lurking in the shadows. But everything was normal. My room was just as it had been before I fell asleep. Had it all been a dream? No. Because when I looked down at my hands, the ring was gone. Morning came, but I felt like I hadn't slept at all. My entire body ached, and my mind was still reeling from what had happened. Then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my bank. I frowned and opened it. Incoming transfer, IDR 1 billion. My breath caught in my throat. It was real. The pact was real. The money had arrived. A sick mixture of relief and dread filled my chest. I had passed the test. But at what cost? Because deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. And whatever had given me this wealth, would come back for more. The money was real. I stared at the bank notification on my phone, my heart pounding. 1 billion rupiah. More money than I had ever seen in my life. It should have made me happy. But instead, my hands trembled. I knew what had happened last night wasn't a dream. I knew I had truly entered that cursed house, had truly been chased by that thing. And worst of all, I knew this wasn't over. A sharp knock at the door made me jolt. Hendra. I opened it, and his expression confirmed what I had feared. He didn't even glance at me before stepping inside, his voice low. They sent the money, didn't they? I swallowed hard and nodded. Hendra sighed, rubbing his face. Then you need to listen carefully. Whatever you do, don't spend any of it yet. What? Why? He looked me dead in the eyes. Because the next test starts when you use that money. The moment you spend even a single rupiah, they'll come again. A cold chill crept up my spine. I had thought the nightmare was over. But it was just beginning. That evening, I tried to act normal. I went about my day pretending everything was fine, but every shadow in my house felt darker. Every noise felt sharper. And then, at exactly 6 p.m., something happened. My phone vibrated. Another bank notification. Outgoing transfer, IDR 1000. I froze. I hadn't spent anything. I opened the banking app, my fingers shaking. The transaction was real. 1000 rupiah had been transferred to an unknown account. And then, another notification. Outgoing transfer, IDR 10,000. Then 100,000. Then 1 million. It was doubling every few seconds. My blood turned to ice. I scrambled to call the bank, but before I could dial, my phone screen glitched. The numbers started changing on their own, moving faster and faster. And then, the screen went black. A whisper echoed from the speaker. You have begun the second test. I dropped the phone. The room grew darker. And then, my TV turned on by itself. At first, it was static. Then, the screen flickered showing me a live feed of my room. And behind me, in the reflection of the TV screen, a tall, shadowy figure stood watching. I spun around, my breath hitching in my throat. The room was empty. But I knew better. The whispering returned, slithering through the air like smoke. Run. The lights flickered violently. The air turned freezing. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I bolted out of my apartment. As soon as I stepped outside, the world felt wrong. The street lights were dimmer than usual. The sky was darker. The people walking past me didn't look normal, like their faces were blurred, as if I was seeing them through fogged glass. I reached for my phone, but the screen was still black. Then, a car screeched to a halt in front of me. It was Hendra. Get in, he yelled. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself into the passenger seat, slamming the door shut just as a shadowy figure emerged from the alleyway. Hendra hit the gas. I didn't dare look back. We drove in silence for a while. I was still trying to process what had just happened when Hendra finally spoke. You spent the money, didn't you? I shook my head. No. But my bank account, the money started transferring on its own. Hendra swore under his breath. That's how they do it? They don't wait for you to spend it. They make you. And once you do, the second test begins. I clenched my fists. What is the second test? Hendra glanced at me, his face grim. Survival. I swallowed hard. What do I have to do? Hendra didn't answer right away. He pulled the car over near an abandoned warehouse, killing the engine. Then, he turned to me. You have to find the mirror. I frowned. Mirror. He nodded. Somewhere in the city, there's an old, cursed mirror. You have to find it before midnight. If you don't. He trailed off. I didn't need him to finish the sentence. I already knew what would happen. I'd be taken. With no time to waste, we searched. Hendra drove frantically through the city, checking every antique shop, every old building he could think of. But time was running out. 11:30 p.m. 11:45 p.m. My hands were shaking. The shadows in the street seemed to be moving on their own now. I could hear whispers coming from the alleyways. And then, at 11:55 p.m., we found it. An old shop at the edge of the city. The sign was faded, written in Chinese characters I didn't recognize. The glass windows were covered in dust, but inside, I could see it. A massive, ornate mirror. The frame was golden, carved with strange symbols. The surface was dark, almost black, like it was swallowing the light around it. We rushed inside. The moment we stepped in, the door slammed shut behind us. And then, in the reflection of the mirror, I saw them. The figures from my nightmares. Standing right behind me. Waiting. The moment we stepped into the shop, the air turned thick like stepping into a place where time had stopped. The massive mirror loomed at the back of the room, its black surface absorbing all light. I could see our reflections, but something was wrong. The reflection of the shop behind us was different. The walls looked cracked. The ceiling was covered in dark stains. And worst of all, there were people standing in the reflection, people who weren't actually in the room with us. I swallowed hard. Hendra, do you see that? He nodded slowly, his face pale. Yeah. We both took a step closer. The figures in the mirror didn't move at first. They stood still, their features blurry, as if hidden behind a layer of mist. And then, one of them smiled. Not a normal smile. A twisted, broken grin that stretched too wide across its face. And in that moment, I realized. It wasn't a reflection. It was something else. Watching us. A creaking noise made us spin around. An old man had emerged from behind the counter. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, his eyes sunken but sharp. He wore a traditional Chinese tunic, his hands clasped together as he examined us. "You are not supposed to be here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard. We need that mirror." His gaze darkened. "Do you even know what you are asking for?" Hendra stepped forward. "If we don't find it before midnight, they will come for him." The old man's eyes flickered to the mirror. "Then you are already too late." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" He let out a slow breath. "Look behind you." Dread crept up my spine. I turned. And my reflection was gone. Only Hendra's remained. And in the space where I should have been, a pair of red eyes stared back at me from the darkness of the mirror. The old man stepped forward, his face grim. "This mirror is a gate. It does not show your reflection, it shows what lies beyond." I could barely breathe. "Beyond, where?" The old man's voice dropped to a whisper. "The realm of the departed." Hendra's fists clenched. "What does that have to do with the pact?" The old man sighed. "The wealth you received, it does not come from nothing. It is borrowed, taken from the souls trapped beyond the mirror." My blood ran cold. "You have spent their money. And now, they want you." I shook my head. "But I didn't spend it. The money transferred on its own." The old man gave me a long, unreadable look. Then he turned toward the mirror. "That does not matter. The moment the pact began, you became a part of it." Hendra grabbed my arm. "We need to break it. There has to be a way." The old man hesitated. Then, slowly, he pointed at the mirror. "There is one way." I followed his gaze. The figures in the mirror had grown closer. I could see their faces now, hollow eyes, stretched mouths, skin pale and torn. Among them, a woman in red stood at the center. She lifted a hand, pointing directly at me. The shop trembled. The old man turned to me, his voice urgent. "If you wish to escape, you must step inside." My breath hitched. "Step inside? Are you crazy?" The old man's expression didn't change. "It is the only way." The air grew colder. The whispers from the mirror became louder, like hundreds of voices speaking at once. Hendra grabbed my shoulder. "This could be a trap." The old man shook his head. "If he does not enter, the spirits will take him by force." I looked at the mirror again. The woman in red was still pointing at me. I could feel something pulling me toward the glass, as if an invisible hand was reaching through, grabbing hold of my soul. I clenched my fists. I had no choice. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. And as soon as my fingertips touched the surface, a cold, skeletal hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. I barely had time to scream before I was dragged inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the world changed. I was no longer in the shop. I was standing in a long, endless corridor. The walls were lined with mirrors, stretching into the darkness. Each mirror showed something different. In one, I saw myself as a child, staring back with hollow eyes. In another, I saw my parents, but their faces were twisted into grotesque grins. And then, in the mirror at the end of the corridor, I saw her. The woman in red. She stood in the reflection, her long black hair covering most of her face. But I could feel her eyes watching me. She lifted her hand and gestured for me to come closer. I wanted to run. But my feet wouldn't move. The air around me grew suffocating. The whispers became deafening. And then, she spoke. Her voice was soft. Calm. Almost, familiar. Welcome home. The last thing I remember was the sound of shattering glass. The air in the corridor was thick like breathing through water. The mirrors around me pulsed, as if they were alive. Shadows moved inside them, their hollow eyes locked onto me. I took a step forward. The whispers grew louder. I couldn't understand what they were saying at first, but as I walked deeper into the corridor, the words started to make sense. Help us. Let us out. He lied to us. I froze. He. I turned to one of the mirrors, my breath hitching. For a brief moment, I saw something familiar, Hendra. But he wasn't in the shop anymore. He was standing somewhere dark, his face pale with fear, his mouth moving as if he was screaming. Then, the image glitched and suddenly, it wasn't Hendra anymore. It was me. Trapped inside the glass. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. The corridor wasn't just a passage. It was a prison. And if I didn't get out soon, I'd be trapped here forever. A low humming sound filled the air. I turned my head slowly. The woman in red was standing just a few feet away. Her face was still hidden by her long black hair, but I could feel her eyes burning through me. She lifted her hand. And suddenly I couldn't move. It was like invisible chains were wrapped around my body, forcing me to stay still. My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as she stepped closer. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost gentle. You should not have come here. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come out. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying me. But now that you have. She lifted a single, delicate finger pointing toward my chest. You must choose. My body suddenly lurched forward. The corridor around me warped, and in an instant, I was standing in front of two mirrors. One was cracked and distorted, its surface pulsing with shadows. It gave off a terrible, suffocating energy. The other was pristine, glowing faintly. The reflection inside was normal. I felt the woman in red standing behind me. One will set you free, she whispered. The other will keep you here forever. My hands trembled. What happens if I choose wrong? I finally managed to ask. She didn't answer. She just waited. The whispers in the air grew deafening. The shadows behind the broken mirror shifted. Something was waiting inside. Something hungry. I clenched my fists. I had to decide. I reached out and chose the pristine mirror. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a sudden, deafening scream tore through the corridor. The woman in red moved for the first time. Her head snapped toward me, her long hair parting slightly just enough for me to see a glimpse of her smile. But it wasn't a normal smile. It was filled with rows of jagged, broken teeth. The pristine mirror shattered. And before I could react, I was pulled inside. I landed with a painful thud. The world was different now. It wasn't the corridor anymore. It was a house. A large, ancient house with wooden walls and red lanterns hanging from the ceiling. The air smelled like incense and something rotten. I turned, my heart pounding. And that's when I saw them. Figures in red robes, their faces covered in cloth. They stood in a circle around me, chanting in a low, eerie hum. In the center of the room was a large, golden bowl. Inside was something moving. My stomach churned. I took a step forward, peering inside. And saw a severed head. Floating in dark, thick liquid. The eyes were wide open. And then they blinked. A voice whispered from behind me. You should have chosen the other mirror. And the last thing I felt was hands grabbing me from the darkness. I tried to move, but the hands holding me were too strong. The figures in red robes tightened their grip, their cloth-covered faces showing no emotion. Their low chants filled the air, blending with the flickering glow of the lanterns. The golden bowl in front of me began to shake. The severed head inside the one that had blinked at me was now smiling. The smile grew wider. Too wide. Then, its lips moved. And in a raspy, broken voice, it whispered. You took what was not yours. My stomach twisted. What are you talking about? The chanting grew louder. The red-robed figures lifted their hands revealing knives. I thrashed against their grip. The severed head laughed. And then it spoke my name. Arman, you belong to us now. The room exploded in screams. Meanwhile, in the real world, Hendra could barely breathe. The moment I was pulled into the mirror, the shop started shaking. The old man had fallen to his knees, gripping his chest. His face was pale, sweat dripping from his forehead. You fool, he gasped. He chose the wrong mirror, he is trapped now. Hendra grabbed his shoulders. How do we get him back? The old man struggled to catch his breath. There is only one way. Hendra's eyes widened. Tell me. The old man turned his head toward the cracked mirror, the one Arman hadn't chosen. If you go in after him, you might be able to pull him out. But if you fail. His gaze darkened. You will be trapped there too. Hendra clenched his fists. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. And plunged into the mirror. I barely had time to react before the ritual started. The red-robed figures surrounded me. Their faces were still covered, but I could hear their voices now whispering in a language I didn't understand. The severed head inside the golden bowl twitched. Then, the liquid inside began to rise. It moved like it was alive, stretching toward me like thick, black tendrils. I tried to run. But the tendrils latched onto my skin. And the moment they touched me, memories that weren't mine flooded into my head. I saw men and women dressed in ancient Chinese robes, their faces contorted in agony. I saw gold and treasure wealth beyond imagination changing hands. And then I saw blood. So much blood. The pact. The wealth. It was all built on suffering. I gasped as the voices inside my head screamed. You are one of us now. The pain was unbearable. And then, a hand grabbed mine. The hand yanked me back, pulling me out of the tendril's grip. I gasped for air, my vision spinning. When I looked up, Hendra was standing there. His face was drenched in sweat, his eyes filled with panic. Arman, we don't have time, he shouted. We need to get out of here now. The red-robed figures froze. The severed head in the golden bowl snapped its gaze toward Hendra. And for the first time, its smile faltered. You, were not supposed to come here, it hissed. The air around us grew heavy. Hendra didn't wait. He grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the nearest mirror. How do we leave? He yelled. I turned, my breath hitching. The woman in red was still standing at the edge of the room, watching us. She lifted her hand. And pointed toward a different mirror. One that wasn't cracked. One that glowed faintly. The exit, I whispered. Hendra didn't question it. We ran. We sprinted toward the mirror, the red-robed figures screaming behind us. The house shook violently. The lanterns above exploded, shards of glass raining down. The severed head's voice rang through the air. You cannot escape the pact. I ignored it. We reached the glowing mirror. And the woman in red stepped in front of us. For the first time, she lifted her face. And when I saw her eyes, I froze. They were familiar. It was her. The girl from my childhood. The one my family had once helped before she disappeared. You must pay the price, she whispered. Before I could speak, she shoved me into the mirror. And everything turned black. I woke up gasping. For a brief second, I thought I was safe. I was lying on a bed. A familiar bed. The one from my childhood home. The morning sunlight streamed through the window. Birds chirped outside. The air smelled like jasmine tea, just like how my mother used to make it. I sat up slowly. Had everything been a dream? A nightmare? I rubbed my face, trying to calm my racing heart. That's when I noticed something. The mirror in my room. It was wrong. The reflection didn't match reality. The window in the mirror showed a dark forest, not my neighborhood. And then something moved. A shadow, standing behind me. I turned around instinctively. Nothing. But when I looked back at the mirror, the woman in red was smiling at me. A chill ran down my spine. I reached for the mirror, my fingers hovering just above its cold surface. Then the woman in red spoke. You escaped the house, but you did not escape the pact. I took a step back. What do you mean? She tilted her head, her long black hair swaying. You belong to this world now. The words sent ice through my veins. I turned toward the door, my breath hitching. I needed to get out. But as I reached for the doorknob, the room twisted. The walls pulsed. The bed rotted away before my eyes. The sunlight dimmed into an eerie red glow. The house was shifting. And then I heard Hendra's voice. Arman. Can you hear me? My eyes snapped back to the mirror. Hendra was there on the other side pounding against the glass. But something else was behind him. A shadow. A tall, grinning figure with empty eyes. I screamed. Hendra's face was filled with terror. Arman. You have to wake up. You're not in the real world. I banged against the mirror. How do I get out? But before he could answer, the shadow behind him moved. It placed a hand on Hendra's shoulder. Hendra's body jerked violently, his eyes rolling back, his mouth opening in a silent scream. And then he disappeared. Like he was swallowed by the mirror itself. The glass cracked. The woman in red let out a soft chuckle. You still do not understand, do you? She whispered. I turned to face her. My entire body was shaking. What do you want from me? She stepped closer, her voice soft. Not me. Her finger lifted, pointing behind me. I turned. And saw my own reflection smiling back at me. Except, I wasn't smiling. The reflection lifted its hand and waved. Then, it whispered. I want your life. I jolted awake again. But this time I wasn't in my house anymore. I was in a small, dimly lit room. The walls were made of old wood, the air thick with the scent of incense. I sat up quickly, but my body felt strange. Weak. Like it wasn't mine. I looked down at my hands. They weren't my hands. They were thin, wrinkled, aged. Panic shot through me. I stumbled toward the mirror on the wall, my heart pounding in my chest. And when I saw my reflection, I realized the horrifying truth. I wasn't Arman anymore. I was the old man from the shop. A deep voice echoed behind me. The cycle continues. I spun around. The woman in red was standing there. Her expression was calm. You took what was not meant for you, she said. Now, you must live in his place. No. My voice trembled. This isn't real. This isn't happening. But it was. I was in his body. And that meant he was in mine. I grabbed her shoulders. Let me go back. Switch us back. She smiled. It is not up to me. Then she stepped aside, revealing the mirror once more. In the reflection, I saw my younger self. But it wasn't me anymore. It was him. The old man. He turned his head slightly, meeting my gaze. And then, he smiled. Thank you for taking my place. The mirror shattered into dust. And everything went black. I woke up gasping for air. The moment my eyes snapped open, I knew something was terribly wrong. I wasn't in my own body. I was in his. The old man's. My fingers trembled as I lifted them in front of my face, thin, veined hands with wrinkled skin. My breath hitched. No. No, this wasn't real. I turned to the dusty mirror in the dimly lit shop. The reflection that stared back at me was not mine. It was the old shopkeeper's. The same man who had warned me about the mirror. I felt my chest tighten. My heart pounded like a hammer. And then the door creaked open. A customer walked in. A young man. My age. His eyes flickered toward me empty, knowing. He smirked. And in that moment, I knew. I was now the keeper of the shop. Just like the old man before me. Just like every other fool who had touched the cursed mirror. The shop felt different. Before, it had been a cramped, dusty little place. Now, it felt alive. Like the walls were breathing. The smell of old incense clung to the air, mixing with the faint, metallic scent of blood. I stumbled toward the counter, my mind racing. Was there a way to undo this? Could I escape? My eyes landed on the mirror, the same cursed mirror that had stolen my body. Its surface was cracked, but in its depths, I saw something shifting. I leaned closer. And suddenly Hendra's face appeared. I staggered back, my breath catching. He looked, trapped. His face pale, his eyes wide with terror. Arman. His voice was distant, echoing. You have to get out. It's not over yet. The mirror rippled. And then, something pulled him back into the darkness. His scream was cut short. I barely had time to react before the shop bell rang. Someone had stepped inside. My pulse quickened. It was her. The woman in red. She glided toward the counter, her feet barely touching the ground. Even though I was in the old man's body, I felt like she could still see the real me. You understand now, don't you? She whispered. I clenched my fists. Change me back, I demanded. Give me my body back. She chuckled softly. You still don't get it? I felt my throat tighten. The shop needs a keeper, she said, tilting her head. Someone must take the place of the last one. My stomach twisted. She reached out, gently brushing her cold fingers against my wrist. And now, that someone is you. The door creaked open. A young man walked in, his expression hesitant. I knew that face. It was me. No, not me. It was the old man in my body. He moved naturally, effortlessly, as if he had always been Arman. He looked around the shop with a small, knowing smile. I felt rage boiling in my veins. You stole my life, I hissed. He looked at me and smirked. I didn't steal anything, he said. You took my place, just like I took the one before me. I clenched my jaw. I'll find a way out. His smirk widened. Oh. He leaned against the counter. Then why don't you try? I wanted to kill him. But deep down, I knew. I was already dead. Or at least, this version of me was. The old man now in my body leaned in. The moment you touched the mirror, your fate was sealed. I shook my head. No. There has to be a way out. He chuckled. That's what I thought too. That's what everyone before you thought. I felt a lump in my throat. But the curse doesn't break. His voice was soft, almost mocking. It only passes to someone else. My fingers tightened into fists. Then. Was there only one way to escape? To trick someone else into taking my place? I looked at the mirror, my reflection still showing the old man's face. And for the first time, I realized. The cycle never ended. It only continued. And I was now part of it. I sat behind the counter, staring at my wrinkled hands. The reality of my fate was sinking in. This wasn't a dream. I was trapped. The shop felt alive, breathing around me. Every creak of the wooden walls, every flicker of the candlelight, it all whispered the same thing. You are the keeper now. I reached for the mirror, desperate. Maybe, just maybe, there was something I hadn't tried yet. My fingers grazed the surface. And suddenly, a voice hissed in my ear. The price must be paid. My heart slammed against my ribs. The voice wasn't mine. It came from the mirror itself. I yanked my hand away, breath shallow. The mirror had spoken. And it was waiting for something. I frantically searched the shop for clues. There had to be a way out. In one of the drawers beneath the counter, I found a dusty leather-bound book. It was a ledger. Flipping through the pages, I saw names. Hundreds of them. Each one had a date beside it, followed by a single word. Trapped. Freed. Vanished. I swallowed hard. The last name on the list mine. Next to it, the word trapped. My stomach churned. If people had been freed before, then that meant there was a way out. But at what cost? The shop bell rang. I froze. A new customer had stepped inside. A teenage boy, no older than 18. His eyes roamed the shelves with curiosity. He didn't know. He had no idea what this shop really was. The moment he laid eyes on the mirror, I knew. The shop had chosen him. A way out. I felt a deep, twisted relief. If he touched the mirror, I could be free. I stood up slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. All I had to do was convince him. I forced a friendly smile. Looking for something special. My voice was hoarse, unfamiliar. The boy looked at me, confused but intrigued. Just browsing. I gestured toward the mirror. That's a rare piece. Came all the way from China. Said to grant wishes. His eyes lit up. Hook, line, and sinker. Really? He stepped closer, his fingers inches away. I held my breath. Just touch it, I wanted to say. Take my place. But just as his hand was about to press against the glass, the woman in red appeared. Her voice was a whisper. Is this the kind of man you've become? My body went rigid. I turned. She was standing right beside me. No one else could see her. You were a victim once, she murmured. Now you're the villain. My throat tightened. Was this really the only way? Had I become just like the old man before me? The boy's fingers hovered over the mirror. I had seconds to decide. If he touched it, I could be free. But would I be damning someone else to my fate? I clenched my jaw. The shop, the mirror, the cycle, it was all designed to continue. The woman in red whispered again. Make your choice. My chest ached. I had wanted freedom so badly. But could I live with myself, knowing I had trapped an innocent soul? The boy turned to me. Does it really grant wishes? The words tasted like poison in my mouth. I opened my lips to say yes. But instead, I said, get out. The boy blinked. Huh. Leave, I said, firmer this time. Now. His eyebrows furrowed, but something in my voice must have scared him. Because he turned and walked out the door. The shop fell silent. I exhaled shakily. The woman in red smiled. Interesting choice, she said. And then the mirror cracked. And I felt something shift. Like the entire shop was changing. For the first time, I realized. Maybe there was another way. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't trapped after all. The mirror cracked, a jagged, lightning-like fracture spreading across its surface. I stumbled back, heart racing. Something had changed. The shop groaned around me, the wooden walls shifting like a living thing. I expected the woman in red to say something, to mock me, to scold me. But she just smiled. You did something no one else has ever done, she said. You refused the trade. I swallowed. What does that mean? She tilted her head. It means the rules have changed. A deep, thundering noise rumbled through the shop. The lights flickered. And suddenly a scream. Not from me. From the mirror. I turned back to it, my breath hitching. The crack had widened, revealing something beneath the surface. Something alive. A hand. Thin, bony fingers scratched against the glass. Someone was trying to break free. Or worse, something. The woman in red watched the mirror with amusement. You've woken it up, she murmured. I turned to her, panic rising in my chest. Woken what up? She sighed, as if explaining something obvious. The thing inside. I stared at her. The mirror doesn't just trap souls, she continued. It feeds something else. Something older. I felt my stomach drop. Older. The shopkeeper before me, the one who stole my body, had said the curse could never be broken. But what if? What if the mirror wasn't just a curse? What if it was a prison? And what if by refusing the trade I had started to break it? The scratching turned into pounding. Fist against glass. Harder. Faster. The mirror shook violently. The room vibrated, sending books toppling off the shelves. And then, a single eye pressed against the crack. My body froze. It wasn't human. Its sclera was black, its iris white, a swirling abyss that seemed to pull at my very soul. The woman in red chuckled. It's been so long, she whispered. And it's so hungry. I stumbled back, my pulse hammering. What have I done? I choked out. She smiled. You changed the rules. The mirror exploded. Glass shards flew in all directions. I shielded my face as a cold, inhuman wind blasted through the shop. And then it stepped out. A figure, draped in shadow and silk, towering over me. Its face was shifting, flickering between human and something grotesque. Its voice was a guttural whisper. At last, free. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But my feet were glued to the floor. The woman in red bowed. Welcome back, my king. I felt my blood turn to ice. The mirror hadn't just held souls. It had held him. And now, he was free. The creature stood before me, towering, shifting, an abomination between worlds. Its face flickered 1 second, it was an ancient emperor, adorned in golden silk. The next, it was a hollowed corpse, rotting, grinning. And then, it was nothing at all, just darkness, stretching into infinity. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The woman in red knelt before it, reverent. My king, she whispered. You are free. The creature turned to me. You denied the trade, it said, voice like 1,000 dying echoes. I barely found my voice. I didn't want to. And yet, you broke the cycle. Its eyes locked onto mine. Which means you are either a fool, or my favorite kind of human. I swallowed hard. A gamble. The shop groaned like a dying beast. The walls trembled, the air thickened. The entity stepped closer. You have given me what I wanted, it murmured. Now, you shall take what was meant for you. I tensed. Take what? The woman in red smile grew wider. He's offering you a deal. I shook my head. No more deals. The entity laughed. A deep, hollow sound, like the universe splitting apart. Foolish mortal. Everything is a deal. It lifted one clawed hand. You released me, so I shall grant you the one thing you seek most. I braced myself. Freedom. Escape. But instead, it whispered. A legacy. A force slammed into my chest. Pain. Pure, searing pain. I screamed as the shop twisted around me, warping, consuming me whole. The floor vanished. The walls stretched into endless corridors, lined with mirrors. Thousands, millions, all reflecting different versions of me. One where I was young. One where I was old. One where I had taken the trade. And then, one where I was him. I gasped, my body turning cold. I knew. I understood. I had never escaped. The moment I refused to trade places, the shop had chosen me. The entity grinned. You will replace me. I turned to the woman in red. Please, I choked out. Help me. She tilted her head. Oh, dear boy, she said. I already have. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream. But I was sinking. The mirrors swallowed me whole, one by one. The last thing I saw. The woman in red, still smiling. The entity, now just a shadow, fading into nothing. And the shop mine. A new bell rang. A new customer walked in. And without thinking, I greeted them. Welcome. I stood behind the counter. The shop felt, right. Like I had been here forever. Because now, I had. I looked down. The ledger was open in front of me. A name had been written at the bottom. My name. Next to it, in the same cursed ink, was a single word. Keeper. The shop bell rang. A teenage girl stepped inside, eyes wide, scanning the mirrors. Curious. Innocent. I sighed. I knew what I had to do. I smiled. Looking for something special. The door closed behind her. The shop whispered. The cycle began again. Thank you for listening to this story. But remember, never assume this is just a story. Who knows, something might be listening along with you right now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. But be careful, maybe after this, something else has subscribed behind you. See you in the next tale, and may your night remain peaceful, if it can.